Hello and welcome back to art class. Today we're going to finish up our silhouette project, our bridge silhouette project. And you're going to need a few items to that. You're going to want a scrap piece of paper. You can see I just grabbed one that I'd used in something else. You just need it big enough to do some quick sketches so you have an idea of what we're doing before we do it on the final copy. You do need your background that has the warm colors for like the sunset and then the cool colors for the water. You're going to want an eraser, you're going to want a pencil. You can use, there's a couple options to go with this. You can just use, if you're careful, the watercolors, because we're going to be using the black today. You can use a Sharpie marker for some fine detail. You could use a black crayon. You could use a regular Crayola marker, like that. There's just many different ways. Basically, our silhouette is going to be black, so we just need a material that's going to work. You're going to have to choose the one that's best for you. That's one of the reasons why you want the scrap papers. You want to draw it out and have an idea of what you're doing before you do it. So today, we're going to talk about the bridges, and there are about 7 different versions of major versions of bridges. Now with today's technology, what's really neat is they can combine and kind of mix and match some of these types to make new and interesting bridges. So we're going to talk about the first set of bridges, and it's the one that's the easiest to build. It is the slab bridge. Okay? And basically what it is there's just what they call pylons, things that hold up the basically a slab of metal or a slab of concrete. And that's all it is, just rests on top. It may be bolted in place. That's all there is to it. They're pretty simple. And that's one of the more common ones, the simple one. Then we have the next bridge, which is called the truss bridge. The truss bridge has the triangle and the squares that you see they're usually made out of steel or iron. And on today, with more modern materials, it could be a different kind of metal, but you'll see them as triangles or squares, and they kind of have that zigzag pattern. They can get kind of fancy. So the basic one you see here, and then the fancier one that you're seeing now, it has the truss combined with an arch in the middle. We'll talk about the arch in a second, but the truss just helps support the weight of all the stuff that's driving in the concrete and things like that. So let's move on to the next one, which happens to be the arch bridge. The very basic arch bridge you see here, this one's from China, and you can see it's got a big arch there. The curve actually helps support the weight of everything that's going across the top, okay? And still allows for an item to go underneath, like water or boats and things like that. Arches have changed a little bit since they did them only in stone. In this next one, you can see the arch that is very high. It's actually above the roadbed there, and the cables are hanging down to actually hang the roadbed from the arch itself. The arch is really a nice way to do bridges because it allows the weight of the cars and the roadbed to go in different directions so that it's not falling into the river or lake or whatever. Next one, a little bit more complicated, is called the cantilever bridge. You can see that one here, and that bridge is really, it's kind of like, if you notice, it's got that truss style with the triangles and the squares going on, but in the very middle where the sections are connected, the weight is balanced just perfectly so that they don't have to have anything major right where the two pieces connect between the sets of connecting truss areas. So it's just about balancing the weight and things like that. So just a different way of doing, basically it's kind of an advanced version of the truss bridge. One that you're probably instantly familiar with is going to be the suspension bridge. You see them in movies all the time. This example here is from England, and you might know one, the Golden Gate Bridge, which is one of our more famous ones in the United States, or the Brooklyn Bridge. That was a very famous suspension bridge. And what suspension bridges are is they kind of, if you look at it, are very similar to the arch bridge. It's like the arch has been flipped upside down, and the big heavy cables are what hold the weight, and then there's those cables hanging down from the big thick ones, and then all the weight is then moved off to these big towers here so that they can hold up the roadbed. And one of the more modern ones, the newer bridges, that came up with the design is that it's kind of like a suspension bridge. You got all the same cables, but it's called a cable stay bridge. And instead of having the big loop or bent curved cable that holds it up and then the cables are connected to skinnier cables, everything is directly connected to the towers, and that's what's actually holding up the bridge that way. It's just a different way of doing it, but it's not technically a suspension bridge because it does not have that big curved, thick bundle of cables that's holding everything else up. Now today, these are just the simplified versions. Do architects and cities and things like that, do they kind of mix and match at times? Yes, they do. So you may find bridges, especially if you go online, that are a combination of one or two of these, and that's pretty normal to do because they're always kind of experimenting, or one city is trying to outdo another city with their bridge and things like that. What we're going to do today is we're going to take those ideas and we're going to make them on our picture here. So that's where your practice piece of paper comes in, and your pencil and eraser. So on your practice piece of paper, what I suggest you do is draw out a mini version of your picture, and then have a dividing line right about the middle where your sky and your bridge or your water is going to be. And then your bridge is going to have to go off the page, so there's actually going to be a little bit bigger than what can fit, because we didn't put any ground in here. So you may have to put what are called pylons. Pylons are, if you remember back to the bridges, the things that stick into the water. Those are considered pylons. Okay? And then some of them, those pylons get made into big towers if you're doing a suspension bridge. I need you to kind of draw out what you want for your bridge. And so I am going to do kind of simple. I'm not going to go crazy complicated, but I like the arch. So I'm going to do an arch. Oops. Okay, so I have right here in my picture, I'm going to have the pylons, so the arch is going to connect those. And then I'm going to do I'm going to do a truss on the sides here. Truss, remember, is again where you're doing that triangle, and it should kind of match part. And then I need some cables hanging down, supporting my railroad or my road bed. And then I think that's pretty good. I'm going to keep it like that. So now I have my idea of where I want this to go. I'm going to have my bridge go a little bit higher than the water. So you're going to see the water line and then the bridge. So what I'm going to do is then I'm going to carefully kind of sketch this out on my drawing. And that's about 3 finger spaces from the side. So I'm going to be able to do about 3 finger spaces for the side for the other one. I'm going to give it a shape here. And then matching shape over here. And then I'm also going to give it some ground. Just because, now do some just go straight into the water? Yep, but I'm going to give it a little bit of ground, and then this will all be a silhouette, so this is going to be black as well. Did I make some small changes from my rough draft? I did, because I wanted a little bit of a change there. All right, so next, what I'm gonna do is I think I'm gonna paint the big thick parts because I think that would be the easiest. And then I will probably Sharpie some of the skinnier parts. If you're really careful with your brush, you could do it with just the brush. that I have my bridge done, as you can see, I did part in watercolor, and then I did part in Sharpie just because my watercolor brush could not do as nice thin lines. So the Sharpie worked well. You could use a crayon. Black colored pencil would also work really well, just as long as it's nice and black to match what's going on. The other thing I want to do is I want to add in some kind of flowing lines. So just to make it look like the water is moving. Okay. And then the other thing is I would like a line. If your bridge is not covering it up, we probably do need a line for the separation of the sky versus the water, so your horizon line. If your bridge happens to be thick enough and it's actually covering that line, then you don't need to worry about it because your bridge is covering it. But I had mine a little bit higher than the actual horizon line. So I added a little bit of water. So I'm gonna add and they're going around my islands or my pylons there. And I'm not gonna add too many. I'm gonna add a few here and there, like that. I would suggest if you're not sure about these, do them in pencil first and see if you like it. If you don't like it, then you can erase it. Okay? So I would recommend doing that part in pencil first, but since I already knew what I was wanting, I went ahead and did them straight in marker. And then what I need you to do is let it dry for a minute or a couple minutes, because you can see that now it's still lit. Then take a photo of it, upload it to Google Classroom for me, and I will see you next week.